Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Fashawn album, the Ecology. This guy is a West Coast rapper, and this is his second solo full-length commercial project, which I have been waiting for since like late 2009, 2010. And like 5 years is a really long time in rap years, especially in the internet age. But Fash has been busy doing some feature appearances. He had a Murs collaboration. He's also been touring a little bit. He had a mixtape drop in 2011 too. And he's also signed with Nas's record label Mass Appeal for the release of this new album as well. But in my opinion, Fashawn's debut full-length LP, Boy Meets World, was so good that it was definitely worth keeping an eye out for whenever he would eventually drop the Ecology, which was a project that he announced he would release that would be the follow-up to Boy Meets World not too long after the release of that album. Now, this record was entirely produced by rapper, producer, Exile, who was also fresh off of a really fantastic project with fellow West Coast artist Blue, and Exile's magic worked similarly for Fashawn as well. Fash built up to this album with a series of mixtapes, live shows, cyphers, so when he eventually dropped this album, he sounded super confident, experienced, and he delivered loads of conceptual tracks that reflected on his past, his childhood, his experiences with gang violence, his mother's revolving door of sometimes dependable and sometimes really seedy boyfriends. There was a tribute to California on this record as well, and my favorite cut on the entire LP, the Ecology, which was a really just urgent, hard-hitting and dark take on Fashawn's surroundings, which was a tone I assumed and hoped would carry through onto this new record over here, given that it was titled after the hardest song on Boy Meets World. But unfortunately, in my opinion, there's not a single song on the Ecology, the album, that is as good as the Ecology, the song. Nor do I find this new LP to be as charming or as interesting as Boy Meets World. It doesn't really have that hard dose of reality that Boy Meets World had, and I don't think it consistently delivers that down-to-earth, relatable charm. I thought a lot of the instrumentals on Boy Meets World were a little more preferable as well, really soulful, a little dirty, but still really sweet. On the flip side, the instrumentals here feel maybe a little too squeaky clean, even though the bulk of the production here is handled by Exile himself. Even The Alchemist finds himself in the production list here. However, my issues with this LP don't entirely lie with the production, but still, there are moments on here like the really gaudy banger Out the Trunk, a loud, bassy, trunk-knocking pop rap track that sounds kind of dated, like it would have went over a lot better in the 2000s, also features a really prominent Busta Rhymes sample. The humble demeanor and personal stories of his earlier stuff just don't really come through on this track, and instead I feel like we're getting a song that's just kind of general, just really meant to appeal on a visceral level. I don't really think this track is meant to catch the ears of people who are really focusing in on lyrics, which is fine, you know, if you're making hip-hop music like that, but I don't really think that's a lane that Fashawn plays in very well. I've never considered him the slickest guy in a lineup, and I just think he's better at delivering stories and vivid imagery than he is punchlines. There are some other tracks here that feature super forced, clumsy hooks, like the song Place to Go, I know. A chorus that is seriously overused considering how underwritten it is. Pretty much every chorus on here where I hear Fash doing singing vocals doesn't go over that well, though he does have some good guest singers on here when they do appear, like BJ the Chicago Kid. He appears on one track. I just wish maybe he left more choruses to some of these guest singers, especially on the song Fuck the World. Fuck the whole world, but I love the whole world. Not only are the lyrics on the chorus here an incredible turnoff, but Fash's singing on this track just gets super obnoxious. Plus the uppity beat and the glitzy pianos on this track really aren't doing his vibe any favors either. There are some pretty nice, sweet, relaxed female vocals on the opening track here that remind me a little bit of Lorde. It's not too bad, but the song is actually way too mild to kick an entire record off, especially a song that's acknowledging it's been a while since we've heard from Fashawn, at least in a full-length album capacity. Luckily, things pick up on the next track here, Confess, which has a huge tip of the hat to Boogie Down Productions and the lyrics. It's hard-hitting, it's gritty in a sense, but still, the record isn't sitting quite well with me. And Fashawn might insist that that might have something to do with me not following his evolution on this album, which he does on the song Higher. Where lyrically, I feel like Fash is kind of preemptively stepping in the faces of potentially unhappy fans and listeners, calling them out as being impatient or just unwilling to follow him down a different road or into some different territory. And I will be the first one to admit that, sometimes listeners throw bands that they once loved to the curb and no longer be supportive. The fan-artist relationship isn't really the healthiest out there. But getting super indignant toward the people who are listening to your record isn't exactly a solution to the problem. And despite Fashawn's mentions of evolution, he continues to circle around a lot of the same topics, taking some of them at slightly different angles. There is a tribute to California on here, though this one seems to be a little more old school than the previous one Fashawn had penned. On Boy Meets World, it also features a sweet G-funk style instrumental. He also raps about growing up with his misfit friends, getting into trouble on the song To Be Young, which features some really nimble pianos. There's also a track here where he's telling a story about having to be the man of the house at a very young age. And the song on the back end of this LP, in tribute to his mother, is really beautiful in a lot of ways. It seems to detail just how damaged their relationship is and her life as well, but still he holds an incredible amount of love and respect for her. It's kind of a display of how deep and unignorable these blood familial bonds can be. There are tracks like Mother where he pushes an emotional boundary, he dives deeper into the topic, he makes revisiting it worth it. But the rest of the time I don't really feel like that's the case, especially with these noticeably blander instrumentals. Though I do have to give props to The Alchemist for the beat he dropped on this album with all the hilarious Sesame Street samples on that beat. Yeah, that was actually pretty awesome. Bland is really how I feel about a bulk of this album. And I'm not really sure what took so long to release it. Was he waiting for the right label, the right time? Was he really kind of at a loss for what to say? Because when this album isn't trying to reheat cold topics, it's delivering tasteless hooks with subpar singing, or maybe even some nondescript verses. This album just feels super basic and in a really unflattering way. Given that it's been 5 years of time between this release and his last full-length LP, I just figured he'd have more to say, and the instrumentals maybe be a little bigger, a little more epic, but instead they're just unbearably sterile. Unfortunately, this LP was kind of a letdown for me, but as a listener who wasn't really into where Fashawn was going or where he wasn't going with this album, I don't really think it has much to do with evolution as it does a lack thereof. I'm feeling a light to decent 5 on this thing. Transition! If you've given this album a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. Anthony Fantano, The Ecology, forever.